All right, everybody got quiet. It must be time to start. Yeah. So what I want to do this morning is we had gone through something pretty quickly last week right at the end. I wanted to go back, look at that a little closer at this particular, and then that's also going to lead us into the next part, to the new material that we'll focus on today. And we're doing that is because the two are connected. And I really recognized that last week, I would have just stopped it where we had come to. But before we get there, Jeff, will you lead us in a word of prayer? Okay. And so what I wanted to do this morning before we start is, and I should have done this last week, is I wanted to show you a couple of pictures. For those who have never seen sort of the Israel itself, we talk about Megiddo a lot, and rightfully so, because as we've learned, it's situated on the coastal highway, and it's basically a gate. And this right here is called a tell. And so sometimes you'll hear them refer to something as tell Megiddo or tell Jericho or something. Okay. So basically what a tell is, T-E-L is how you'd say it. When you would build a town and someone would come in and conquer it, most of the time what they would do is they would just crush everything that they didn't like, and they would build on top of it, right? And so you could imagine, if you would, as archaeologists go in and they find these tells where these cities were, and generation upon generation have built on almost like a layered cake, right? And so you'd have the newest top, and as you got down, it gets older. Well, this is Megiddo. And this is the tell at Megiddo, and it's the reason it's kind of sticking up like that is because it's layered on top of each other. And again, as you can see, it's beautiful, right? Look at all that greenery. The Jezreel Valley that I think is the next picture. Yeah, so that's Mount Carmel looking down onto the Jezreel Valley. See how green it is and how flat it is, and just absolutely beautiful, right? So you could imagine if you're going to lead an army or if you're going to make a journey, how pleasant this would be, right? It's flat, there's all kinds of resources available, and you know, it's very hospitable. Which brings us to the next one, which I think is, we talk about the Transjordan Plateau, that shelf that sort of sticks up on the other side of the Jordan. Well, that's it right there, and that's part of it. So you could see, I mean, it's literally, there's a huge drop-off right there, a huge elevation change where suddenly you go from this sort of tabletop to all of a sudden it just drops into that valley that has the Jordan River in it. And you could, as you begin to see up there, and I think the next one. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, exactly. This is the, what did I put up here? Okay, this is the Transjordan Plateau seen from, and that looks like the Dead Sea maybe, going over the Dead Sea. So this may be from, maybe taken from Megiddo. I mean, not Megiddo, what's the word I'm looking for here? Masada, there you go, sorry. Which is a historical site that takes place after the New Testament times. But you can see, again, that land is very inhospitable. And so if you're going to take an army or you're going to take a trip, do you want to go through the sandbox where there's no place to stop, and you have to carry your own supplies, and water is sometimes limited, especially you get to the Dead Sea, you can't drink that water. Or do you take that valley that we saw that was lush and green? And so just by the geography and looking at the contrast between the two places, it becomes very obvious why some of these lines that we have on our maps are there, right? And just naturally, it allows people to move more freely, and it's an easier travel. And so, again, that's why, as we're looking at this, I just wanted to put these pictures to show the contrast between the two. That's why these places then become so significant. And as we've mentioned in the past, Israel is basically a land bridge between great civilizations. Not that Israel wasn't a great civilization, but in the history of the world, and as far as their influence and territory and all of that, they're a small civilization. Especially you compare them to Babylon and Assyria and Egypt and all of those kinds of things. But because of the natural layout, they're this tiny land bridge between all of those, and they're basically in between the Mediterranean Sea and a big desert. And so that's why all this is important. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go, and we're going to look at, go back and look for a few minutes at David's expansion again. We mentioned this briefly, where he takes Jerusalem and he expands out. But I wanted to go through it again real quickly, point out a few things, and then that's going to lead us into what we want to focus on this morning, which is, again, they're going to be connected. Okay, so David and Solomon, they are known for having these great kingdoms, right? They have prosperity. David he brings peace to Israel and stability. Solomon comes and he takes it to the next level, right? He has all the wealth and riches and things like that. And so the question then is, why is it that Solomon is able to have such prosperity? And I will say this. As I make this point, I'm not discounting that God is blessing him, okay? So we'll just make that here in the beginning. I recognize that God is blessing him, but it's also we want to point out how. How do those blessings come? What are some of the things that take place that allow those blessings to be there? All right. And so when David comes into power, the northern tribes come to David at Hebron, and they want to anoint him king over all of Israel. And so what David does is let me see if I can. Okay, there's our, and I just marked them for us real quick. Here is our major highways. So this is the way of the sea coming down, and it would go into Egypt this way. This is the way of the patriarchs. It's going to come down and go into Egypt. And this is the King's Highway. It comes down through here and then takes a sharp turn and comes back to Egypt, right? Okay. So they want David to be king. They make him king. And David decides that what he's going to do is he's going to capture this Jebus city, our city of Jebus, and he's going to turn it into their capital city, which we now know as Jerusalem. And for those who aren't aware, which I don't know how many of that is, but the word Jerusalem comes from two words. Jeru, which is city, and Shalom, which means peace. And so he names it the city of peace. And so he immediately goes in here and he takes this position, and I'm going to put all this up here, and again, it's a lot of arrows, but we'll talk about it here in just a second. He comes in and takes all of this. Again, Jerusalem is right here. As he takes this, he gets the attention of the Philistines. Because, again, in taking this city, what does he now begin to control? Major trade route right here, right? Which Philistia also controls. They control a major trade route because you have to go through Philistia to go through the way of the sea. So you can imagine if David now controls hold on. Don't do it. If David now controls this, and Megiddo up here, if you're Philistia, what do you think? Yeah, we're in trouble, because now all he has to do is come down and take this, and he controls 2 major highways. So you're now also, beginning if you're Philistia, if they control all this area right here, like this, you're now sort of boxed in, right? You've got on one side of you Israel, who is now fixing to dominate and take a major highway, a trade route. And on the other side, you have a sea. And to the south of you, you have Egypt, right? Which they're not going to go to war with. And so they become, and they get a little nervous, and especially since up to this point, with David, their history has been one of squabbling. They've just sort of squabbled over border territories, and at one point David goes and lives in Philistia and all that, and so they begin to get nervous, and so you have David does that. He pursues Philistia from Gibeon to Gezer in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 17 through 25, and in 2 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 1, he secures the western border and expands his highway by subduing the Philistines. Sorry. And so, obviously, they get nervous, but the first thing David does, he does exactly that. He moves this way, takes Philistia, and now he has control of these 2 areas, which is great, right? Now if you're David, you think, well, I have these 2 great trade routes.